Welcome everybody, this is Denny and Karl with Get Wisdom, and today we're going to continue with the channeling series, and Karl's going to channel Ennio Morricone, who is a famous composer from Italy, who in the US probably best known for some of the movie musical adaptations, arrangements for movies like Fistful of Dollars, the spaghetti westerns. He worked with Sergio Leone. My introduction to him was with a movie called Once Upon a Time in the West, which I absolutely love and still love. And he did some other collaborative work in the U.S. film industry with another famous director whose name escapes me right now. Do you remember who he was? I knew this was going to happen. I was going to draw a blank. He did. I can't think of the names of the movies now. Let's look it up here. Yeah, he did The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. And he worked with Sergio Leone. The Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns. And then he worked with what's his name? I'm sorry, it's missing. It's totally escaped me right now. It'll come back to me at an inappropriate time. So anyway, with that, I want to just thank everybody for joining us. Thank you, Karl. We'll talk a little bit about music. This is not our first musician by any stretch, or even our first composer, but I think Ennio is kind of a standout, at least in the modern world.
Yes, thank you, Denny. Thanks to all of you watching this. This fellow is really a musical titan. If you're not aware of it, it's not easy to make a living as a musician. and even less so, I think, as a composer, because there are so many tried and true old war horses and a whole compendium of written works that can be adapted and reserved and with differing kinds of orchestration and ensembles and so on. You do it with wind bands, you do it with an orchestra, you do it with various other compositions and quartets and that kind of thing. And so to go to brand new music that's untested and untried, and so no one really knows what the broad appeal might be, is a very daring thing. So someone who makes a living at it has to have something, because this is a necessary ingredient, and if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't work right, like as an accompaniment to a film, the whole thing will fall flat.
Yeah.
And people will notice, and it won't really reach the public. They'll get rid of that musical artist in a flash moment and bring in someone else to rescue it, just like they do with writers.
Yeah.
They redo the screenplays 6 times often.
It's not like changing the lead role actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing I would say, if you've never heard of this person, you've heard his music. I would bet money you've heard his music.
Yeah.
More than once.
Yeah.
And that's the lot of today's musicians. They're usually not an afterthought, but in the background, in a sense. And so the music is for mood setting and to provide that artistic touch to draw the person in emotionally into the production, which it does magnificently, and it's a stellar contribution. And if you think about the big blockbuster movies, oftentimes the musical accompaniment that is orchestrated for those particular productions is very integral to their success.
Yeah.
You think of these great epic things like the Star Wars series and Jurassic Park and Jurassic Park 2 and on. The conductors and composers that put the screen scores together really added materially to the value.
Yeah.
To bring those things to life and stir the emotions that allow you to immerse yourself in a way you wouldn't just seeing something on the screen.
So the fellow I was trying to mention was Quentin Tarantino, and the movie he did was The Hateful Eight, and he received his only competitive Academy Award for his score for that movie, becoming the oldest person to ever win a competitive Oscar. But it's probably his most famous and movie he did was The Mission. I think that was back in the 80s. Extraordinary movie that was based on a true story in South America. Kind of a fisticuffs battle involving the Jesuits between the Portuguese and the Spanish in the jungles of South America and the Indian tribe down there. And he was nominated for that, and he lost out to someone who'd done music for a movie where all the music had been done and purposed elsewhere, and then revived for the use of the music. I think it was Herbie Hancock, I can't remember. But anyway, he was passed over for that. And then I guess he got together with his financial people, and they realized that he was being paid at the lowest tier for his work for all the Hollywood movies. So he stopped doing music scores for U.S. movies at the height of his career, if I'm not mistaken. And he around that period of time, I guess the 70s and 80s, he was doing 3 movies a month with this little studio group in Italy. And I've always listened to his music for the American movies, which is, some of them were repurposed. I mean, Sergio Leone stuff came out in 67 or whatever in Italy, and then 69, 2 years later in the U.S., like the Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and those kind of movies. So those are the movies that I reference him to. But I got to listen just here recently. I was doing research. That's the music that he did, the musical stuff that he did for the Italian movies and the European movies. Oh my gosh! I mean, it's off the charts. It's just amazing. And he did so many unique things. He would, I was telling Karl this earlier, unlike most composers will work at a piano, and they do all their drafting in pencil, all their musical notations in pencil, so they can make corrections and edit as they go. He never did that. He sat at his desk with an ink pen, and that's how he composed. And he did that over and over and over and over again with these hugely successful musical scores for all these different movies. 3 movies a month. It's an incredible amount of work. And I've also seen him at his podium conducting the orchestra while watching the footage of the movie that he was scoring for. It's just, it's amazing. So he's timing the music to what he's seeing on the screen. And, he was just an amazing guy. When he was young, I think he was 12 years old, he went to a music school, and his father was a trumpet player in a band, I think in Rome somewhere. And occasionally his father would get sick. So I think I got this right. He was in a 4-year musical program that he completed in 1 year. He was composing on his own as an adjunct to this full study, workload that he completed ahead of time. And he was substituting for his father playing the trumpet at night at these clubs. And, it's like just in huge capacity for a great amount of work that he did. And his whole life was like that. I think one of his sons now tours with an orchestra and does his music now that he's passed. And I don't think they got to see too much of his father because he just worked all the time. And so music was everything. And he never listened to music.
Well,
but he would
other people's music, but.
Right? Yeah, but you see, he didn't go to other people's music. He said that's theirs. But what he would listen to is the sounds around him, like the typewriter. He incorporated a typewriter into his music. He incorporated animal noises, car doors closing, all these telephones ringing, things that are in our environment. He would incorporate that into the music that he would do. Just a fascinating fellow.
Creative genius.
A creative genius, easily, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm struck by the comment about composing in his head and orchestrating in his head without having at least a piano to, play the notes and the intervals and chords.
Yeah.
To see how they sound as a grouping in a certain context. And that reminds me of Mozart. He was the same way. He had the music in his head, and he would sit down and write it, and it would be perfect.
Yeah.
He didn't have to change things.
He didn't have to edit it.
Because he did it in his head first, and it was perfect, and then he just wrote it out without any kind of adjunct to double check. Is that the right interval? Let's play those 2 notes, on a piano keyboard. So that really denotes the maestro, the true musical genius, prodigy, whatever term you want to use, someone who's born to do it, and has got the equipment coming in, that command of understanding of music in a very deep way, and a communication, I would venture to guess, with higher power, because that's where music, like art, comes from. It comes from the divine. We think of ourselves as creative beings, and we are, up to a point, but a lot of it is using that borrowed energy and the inspiration we get from above without realizing it. And the great artists are tapping into that. And that's really the true source of what they have. But they have to have within them the capability, the passion, the yearning, and the ability to feel it and understand it and convey it to others.
Yeah, and then not get waylaid like so many do. Like you see, I know there's a lot of young prodigies that they get to a certain point and something in life steers them in a direction where they can't really stay the course, I think it happens endlessly. And that was just the opposite with him. I mean, I think he figured out early in life how to stay in that sphere of creator's influence as it relates to music. And he never strayed. he lived. I think he just lived his whole life like that, and whereas a lot of his contemporaries just didn't have that. They weren't fortunate in that way. Maybe fortunate's not the right word. I'm sure his soul deserves a lot of credit for the way his life went. It was a lot of dogged determination.
Yeah. Well, life is not easy, and especially when it comes to creative work.
Yeah, especially music, I think.
Yeah, there's so much discouragement, and there's such a lack of appreciation. And the suppression of creative music is built into the system, the way it works. The disempowerment from making music non-productive economically.
Yeah.
To have the artist not really rewarded. Their stuff gets recorded and it gets disseminated electronically all around the world to everybody, and the artists never get a penny for it. And this kind of manipulation, it's the same with the publishing industry and the authors. It's the same sort of thing, and it is sinister. And there's dark forces behind that to undercut humanity. And what more powerful way to do it than to take away the best of what humans can produce and besmirch it and minimize it, stifle it, and make it unavailable in its growth, at least. So you get the performers and artists early, you cut them off at the knees if you can, and you cheapen the work, you put obstacles in the way of commercialization. It gets robbed and controlled by others, and the people at the top making financial decisions make the choices about who gets support and who doesn't, and all of that. And it's amazing someone can be successful like Ennio Morricone. He's really a standout in that respect.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear what he has to say about his life and how that worked in interacting with the divine realm, because I expect this is very much a collaboration.
Exactly. Okay, so we have 5 questions for him, and hopefully we will do it justice. It's hard to do justice with just 5 questions, but I did my best, and we'll see what he has to say.
All right, I will connect to him in the light through the creator of all it is. This is how I do all my channeling work. For reasons of accuracy and precision, to be sure getting the right target, as well as safety and protection, because there are many interlopers who will step forward and do a handshake with anyone who does an intuitive outreach. And they've commandeered most channelers to talk to an imposter, not the individual they think they're reaching. And they put on a good show. They're very convincing. They feed back our own spiritual ideas they've learned over the millennia, and they can talk a good game and keep people going. But occasionally there'll be a little poison pill they insert. And mostly it is that they limit what can come forward. And it's all about misdirection and feel-good support, sweetness and light talk. You get a lot of, but not real answers for real-world problems. And that's the demarcation. And it makes people like ourselves, when we talk frequently about the darkness and what it's up to and the impact it has, it makes us look like the oddball and maybe the corrupt ones, that we're trying to ruin your day by telling it like it is. But we're told by the divine, you guys better wake up and soon and face the music here, because it's your job. We're here to fix this.
Yeah.
So we've got to first recognize the problem and see it. So that's what I do and the way I do it. And I will reach out to him in the state of consciousness I need to put protection around the work and make the connection through Creator. And then he will announce when he is on board.
Okay.
This is Ennio Morricone speaking.
Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us about your last days and how you look back on your life before your passing, and then again as you look back on your life as a light being? And were you able to transition successfully?
Your channel knew there was more to the story of my passing that needed to come out. This is always a delicate matter because humans are blamed for everything, when most wrongdoing is not truly their fault. But the origin lies with the instigators behind the scenes, orchestrating things, controlling what humans think and what they do, how they feel often as well. This changes everything to some degree, small or large. And the course of events of human lives, their impact, and how they are experienced by others as living witnesses to all that happens, are subtly influenced and reshaped to even change the meaning of things. This is entirely sinister and a form of corruption that has been ever present in human experience since the beginning of time, as you know it, certainly through recorded history, and long, long before, in the prehistoric era. The interlopers were here and dragging you down, besmirching your lives, your productivity and output, stifling creativity and the advance of human progress on all levels. It is an amazing reality that they not only control your destiny in the largest possible sense, but they control you individually through the ability to program your minds with false beliefs, and individually with an agenda that's customized based on your inner weaknesses from past karmic events in your long history of coming and going to and from the light via reincarnation. And they use that karmic baggage to control you further, particularly to minimize human achievement and human happiness at every turn. They want to sour things. They want to pull the rug out from under the successful. They want to dethrone the great achievers at the pinnacle of their productive life and find a way to degrade them, diminish them, take them out of action at least, so they will not be a contributor to your world and an inspiration to others. They tried again and again to reach me, but without much success. I owe it all to divine support and protection. I was on a mission life, and I was here to serve the cause of the divine. And that is your cause, because that is why you are here, whether you realize it or not. All are here in service to the light. There is no other reason to be in the wretched world you inhabit, with all of its limitations and failings, but to serve the greater good and the cause of human triumph over evil. This is a shocking revelation if you consider the meaning and what it speaks to about you personally, whether you have truly achieved and accomplished what you set out to do. or whether you as well were sidelined, living an ordinary, mundane existence, and perhaps struggling to even accomplish that and keep your head above water, so to speak. But certainly, if you have not achieved greatness, it is not because you did not have that as a goal personally. This is not meaning you are all meant to be the leader of a nation. You are meant to shine your divine light into the world in a way that suits you, that matches the characteristics of your soul you most want to share, that will contribute something and something of value. This is truly done by artists and musicians, the great writers, the poets, and to some extent the philosophers, the great thinkers, those with scientific creativity and interests. There are many ways to contribute to the world and to the growth and evolution of human culture in a way that serves the divine as well as you and your compatriots. But standing in your way is a dark force of evil. That is what truly did me in. I had reached an advanced age and became vulnerable. And so an opportunity was taken with my hospitalization from an injury to arrange things to happen that would end my life altogether. There is no blame for any human in this. And the last thing I would want to see would be any kind of a witch hunt to find a culprit to blame. But we cannot remain silent when someone from the human side, in the form of your channel in this instance, provides us the opportunity to shout forth the truth of what happened to me. Because it happens to many, many human beings. Lives are ended prematurely all the time through manipulations that take many forms. And because hospitals are dangerous places, given that much of what they do is invasive and has a downside, when people are already weakened through illness and infirmity, it is a simple matter to arrange a medical error of some kind to take place, and then to weaken the person further energetically through technological means by the extraterrestrial interlopers who are much more advanced and sophisticated than human technologies reflect. And they can bring about the death of anyone quite easily. And they use opportunities of that kind as a cover. So there will be a ready explanation. When someone gets injured and does not recover, it is assumed to be a sort of natural cause and not questioned. Many times, it is a worsening or a coincidental juxtaposition with an actual direct murder of a person that is arranged to happen. And the individual is simply found dead in their bed. And as the autopsy will show only signs of the physical malady that was their chief complaint, along many times with the ordinary and expected signs of advanced age for those who are elderly, meaning they are in a weakened condition to begin with, and perhaps due for expiration. It is easy to simply conclude this was unavoidable. And in fact, in this true sense of the word, that is very much the case. You cannot stop the interlopers through technological means, wanting it to be so, or bringing in any human level countering force or technology. It does not exist. You only have the divine to work with you. In my case, it was that vulnerability in being in a weakened state that was my undoing. If it were not for that, I would have continued on a good long while further. But it was enough vulnerability. They got the better of me. And it was not possible for the divine to prevent a direct assault in the way it was conducted. The divine works through more subtle means than simply stopping bullets in flight. When things reach that level of intensity with a desire to harm, it is quite difficult for the divine to intervene at that stage. They work from behind the scenes, largely in the past, to shape the future that becomes the current moment. And in my case, this synchronicity of events to present me with medical need in an urgent care situation was not foreseen or expected and not guarded against in advance. And so the divine support did not come in time to prevent my demise. Factoring in many other factors in terms of my karmic history and obligations as well. I was never destined to be a god, to be immortal in physical lifespan. Everyone has a limit beyond which they cannot go. That is built into the container that is your body, but also the fact you are always doing some homework that has an impact on the body, absorbing the slings and arrows of multiple other lifetimes that drag you down and limit what you can achieve and how long you can perform with health and vigor and not succumb to the decline of aging and so forth. So while I had divine support, it was not meant to be forever in a way that would make me above human. You are under the gun. You are in the crosshairs, so to speak. And they are coming for you. That is in their plans always. Your ability to hear these words means you are holding your own, at least up to a certain point. That might not always be the case, and that is why we wanted to speak out. Everyone is at risk because of the environment. You inhabit a dark place with dark designs on you and everyone, and few are aware of this reality. You can fight back, and that is what we are here, at least in part, to share with you.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes you filled in for your father on trumpet when he could not work. You did this as well as composing when you were already studying music on a full-time basis. How was this prolific activity fueled? and how did it serve your life's mission?
You can see from my productivity and my work ethic, particularly, that I was extremely focused and intent on being productive as a musician and composer. In actuality, my stint as fill-in for my dear father helped me in many, many ways. It inspired me further, both in giving another musical outlet and exposure to the life of the performer in a live setting, and picking up intuitively the reaction of the listeners to what was taking place, including my own music coming forth. This informed me greatly about the missing piece of the equation when one looks at a conductor's score, for example, of a musical work for a large group of musicians. That is simply scrawlings on a page. But there is a deeper life energetically that it represents. The actual musical construction, the musical intervals, and the many nuances of expression that are notated by the composer, the loudness, the punctuation through an attack at the beginning of a musical phrase, the staccato marks, for example, give a flavor and an emotional meaning again and again throughout a body of work. But that is simply the instructions and not the realization of that potential. So it is one level of energy coming from the mind and heart of the creator of the music that will be reworked and re-expressed by the performers, the musicians, following the notations and using their own emotional experience and their own musicianship and how that was gained at all levels through experiencing it, practicing it, and reworking the command of an instrument to grow in capability and excellence, often for many years, before being really, truly ready to perform in public. All of that is well appreciated by music scholars and most of the public. What they do not fully appreciate is the third element in the interchange, which is the listener. Music is meant to stir the mind, heart, and very soul of human beings. It has a divine purpose, always, even when not realized at all. You would hardly think writing a jingle for a toothpaste commercial would have as an agenda to stir the soul. But yet, if done right and effectively, that effectiveness will include as a component the ability to stir the soul itself. It is simply the case that in your culture, you take for granted the ability to respond to music as simply a fact, like the need to breathe feeling hot and cold with the sensing in the skin, and not realizing that your emotional reactions to things are very much a product of your soul as much as anything. They are the backdrop, they are the wellspring, and they are the springboard for everything that happens to you, because what happens to you is as much your reaction to what is taking place than those things in the environment that impact you. It is very much the same in the musical arena, that the audience will react to the music impinging on them to become a shared soul experience. If music of a high caliber is being produced, it will happen each and every time. That is what distinguishes music from noise. This is looked at a scholarly level and called music theory, that musical intervals have a mathematical organization, and indeed they do. That is an aspect of beauty, that it has an organization. It is not a hobby. It is not a random agglomeration of things that come together with no purpose or design, but the opposite. A highly organized, predictable, and purposeful symmetry that has many implications, because that symmetry has corollaries and it has many variations that can be borrowed on, predicted, and used with effectiveness to enrich the variety, expand on it, and add a degree of depth and soul-satisfying rapture if it is done in a high-level way. That interplay between the audience and the performer is all owing to what was in the mind and heart of the composer. All three participants in producing the end result of a musical experience are feeling the hand of God on them. That is the true wellspring of everything that is beautiful, whether it is visual, sonic, or simply feels right, smells wonderful, or is only felt within and cannot truly be described in words other than a general description, like magnificent, uplifting, transcendent, lofty, and enrapturing. All are possible to do through music itself, but it requires those three levels of involvement to be brought forth. What this means is there is a very serious and intensive organization, planning, and purposeful execution. And even the fact an audience exists has those same elements. It is usually no accident that someone ends up in front of a symphony listening to a concert. Music is one of the ways people are brought together. And it is one of the fabrics of existence that enfold and support the unity of souls. It is in its essence a form of love being expressed. Always, with anything that has beauty and is satisfying and makes a person stop to appreciate it, it is reflecting love as its source energy. Love contains myriad forms of expression. This is what is going on with music and why it is so universally embraced and has so many varieties and forms. It is because love is varied, has multiple levels, and many, many flavors. This is true of the soul, which is a love construct to begin with. So all of its facets have in common love as an ingredient in the very architecture. It is present in greater or lesser degrees of involvement. But that too is an important aspect in that very architecture. Using architecture as a metaphorical example, the magnificence and awesome feel of a great cathedral is not simply in the height of its walls and the length of its beams and the magnificent ceilings, but the sheer volume of the space that it forms and contains. It is the same with love. Love is formed by presence and absence both. Music reflects this, where silence is used to good effect over and over again, every bit as much as the sounding of musical notes. This is the essence of variety and texture, a series of presences and absences by turns that fit together in a logical, predetermined, and planned fashion, and have as an end result a soul experience that evokes feelings as a reflection of what is being stirred within the soul itself. Make no mistake about it, that you exist as a human being, as an extension of your soul. Everything you do is a soul event. The fact you inhabit a physical form that is a living body is a divine creation meant to be a container for your soul extension. It is a working detail, not the be-all and end-all of your meaning. It is simply a prosaic and necessary physical constraint you must live within and deal with. But your soul is much vaster than that. And that vastness is what is expressed in good music and beautiful works of art and passionate words that express great thoughts, lofty notions, and uplift the soul. The soul is always your home base and reference for everything that happens to you. It is another way of looking at human misfortune, that what hurts you is what is taking you away from your soul, its true purpose, and its expression in the moment. You want to get back to it. You want to be restored. You want to feel safe when you are threatened. What is truly being threatened is not simply your life, although that is how you think of it. It is the connection to your soul you yearn for, because that is your link to the Almighty, your greatest friend, and your greatest example of what you can strive for to emulate. That is another way still to think of music. It is God's love coming your way, filtered through human experiencing. And that filtering will alter what comes through. But the purpose is always divine in providing that capability in the first place and the energy to make it happen, as well as the impetus for it to be an activity worth embracing and devoting oneself to passionately. That is what I was doing all of my life, immersed in music. It kept me going, but it rewarded me tremendously. And I'm not speaking about financially here. I'm speaking about living through my soul, living through the divine that flowed through me in that energy, that creative force, aligning me with the soul attributes I could use creatively to shape and form into an interaction with the means of producing sound that would have the ability to touch the human heart. All of that was on display as a performer, and seeing and feeling the hearts of people touched by a musical performance was an experience of great joy for me, and was a huge lifelong influence as well. It is true for everyone that those times of great joy are a touchstone and a kind of milepost one thinks back on to mark their progress and their journey, and can be used to reinvigorate and redirect the very course of the life as a reminder it is possible to achieve greatness, even in a small way. By writing that love energy and using your ability to expand it and shape it in a way that suits you personally and will have greater meaning for others because you have done so.
Okay, thank you. In the 2001 interview with The Guardian, you stated that you had good experiences with De Palma. Quote, De Palma is delicious. He respects music. He respects composers. For the Untouchables, everything I proposed to him was fine. But then he wanted a piece that I didn't like at all. And of course, we didn't have an agreement on that. It was something I didn't want to write. A triumphal piece for the police, unquote. Can you tell us about your musical preferences when it came to such issues, and what was your rationale for accepting or rejecting work where your music would be used in film projects?